Welcome to Safari Yangu Podcast, where we share our stories unapologetically, experiences that shaped us and experiences that continue to shape us. I'm your host, Miss Kimaru. And on today's episode, we are focusing on the segment Lessons from My Life. And today's lesson is take a chance on yourself. And the background of this particular lesson for me would be in 2022. I went to the supermarket. A bookshop actually. I bought manila papers and I have learned business model canvas and all that. So I came to the house with marker pens. I laid down these manila papers in my house and I started mapping. I'm mapping my audience. I wanted to start a podcast. So as I'm mapping, this would be my audience. This would be the type of stories I would want to tell. This is how I would go about it. This is the days I would shoot. This is how I would invite guests for this particular podcast. Because at that point, I had a YouTube channel. It was just Conversations with Hellen Kimaru. That was the name of the YouTube channel. So I felt like I needed to start another segment where now I invite guests to come and talk about their experiences. So that's where the podcast idea came from. And I have that manila paper actually. So I mapped this whole thing and I'm like, this is how I'll go about it. And I placed that thing on my closet for a long time. For a couple of months, it was at the door of my closet. So every time I wake up and I look at the closet, because it used to be the first thing I see from my bed, I see the way that thing is mapped up. And I'm like, one day I'm gonna start this podcast. But stuff happened in my life and I wasn't able to actually start this. I wasn't able to do it. But it's like a seed had been planted at this particular point. I was like, one day I'm still gonna invite guests and talk to them or with them and allow them to share their experiences and how their journeys have been. So I called this thing, I call it Safari Yangu, I call it Safari Yangu actually, just exactly the way it is. It was Safari Yangu. So and Safari Yangu, for those who don't know Kiswahili, it means my journey, because I wanted people to come and authentically tell their stories. And it was there. Every time I have moved house, that particular manila paper, funny thing is that it has moved with me up to date. And you can tell from 2022, it's been a while. I've moved up, I think, around 4 houses or something. So what I did, I have this big envelope. I had gone for a scan a while, and I think a minimized scan or something that give you these like very big envelopes. So I have put it with those results in there because that's where it could fit best. And that's how I knew it's a dream I have carried with me all this while. So last year, me and Patrick of the Spark It podcast, we started talking about a podcast. I told him I have always wanted to start a podcast. And it's like, oh, even me, I wanted to start a podcast. And so he jokingly said, probably me and you should start a podcast. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. We could actually start one. So we started talking about it. I did some research. He was also doing some research on his end. And eventually I remember there was a time towards the end of the year, I was like, hey, we need to have an official meeting and talk about this podcast. Is it really happening? So for me, I really was pushing him. I wanted us to get started because I felt like finally it's gonna happen. So we sat down, we had this conversation. He came up with like a lot of topics we could do. I also put up a few topics or whatever. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, this thing is finally happening. And I remember in January of this year, on I think 23rd, if I'm not wrong, we were mic testing. So we sit down and we're mic testing. So because it was a remote conversation, he called me, we set up the stuff and we're mic testing and to see whether it's working. And we talk and talk. He starts asking me questions about church. We talk. And what was supposed to be like a 20-minute conversation turned up to be like more than an hour conversation. And then when we were done, the next day, I was like, yeah, looks like the microphones are working right. And then we were like, yeah. And then I'm like, okay, so we now need to plan and work on another. We need to plan and work on another episode so that we can upload. And then he's like, what's wrong with this one? I feel like he suggested we upload it. And me, I'm like, no, it's not perfect. Actually, I was looking, honestly, the camera was bad. We were just using the laptop camera. I had not invested in any lighting and stuff like that. I only had a microphone, honestly. There was no good lighting. There was nothing. The camera, we are just using the laptop camera or whatever it is called. And it was so bad on my end, honestly. And he's like, let's upload it. For me, I have reservations. I'm feeling like, hey, man, I probably need to look a little bit better. And I was kind of reserved. And then he's like, sometimes we wait for perfect moments. And sometimes those perfect moments may take us a while. And then he's like, let's upload it. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. But again, I had reservations. So we posted it. And then after we posted it, I realized the importance of sometimes when it comes to content creation, we hold ourselves back because we are waiting for a perfect moment. We are waiting for things to look good, for ourselves to look good, to put on makeup, lipstick, blah, 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 to have good lighting. And the message, I feel like sometimes as far as content creation is concerned, the message becomes, it's most important. I'm not saying you should invest in equipment and stuff like that, but if you're also waiting for that perfect moment, it may never come, or it may take you longer when you could have just started with what you have, and then you grow and learn from there, and also you continue investing. And so that's what happened. So from there, it was a good trial run, and then we started shooting other episodes, and it was so thrilling and exciting. And now the Spark It podcast right now has almost 150,000 views, close to 1,050 views. It has almost 900 whatever on TikTok. Please follow us there too. And also on YouTube, we are almost hitting 1,000 followers, which is brilliant, seeing that we started it now. Our first very official episode was in February of this year. We've tried to be as consistent as we could, and I have seen how much believing in yourself, taking a chance on yourself, how much it could yield fruit. So by June, I kind of felt like this whole idea of Safari Yangu, it was just seated in the back of my head. I'm kind of feeling like I have equipment, I have stories to tell, I have so much I could share. And also with the Spark It podcast, we have a specific niche we are working with. And I felt like there's stories that we are not able to tell, and I wanted to also continue telling them, because there is no harm also in telling other stories. We are storytellers. Yeah. So that's when I remembered, I have always had this idea from day one. And then I decided, so I was like, you know what, I'll start another podcast. And this particular podcast is just going to be called Safari Yangu. It will mostly focus on women and their personal experiences. They'll share their stories very raw, unapologetically, experiences that have shaped them and continue to shape them. But for the lessons of my life, from my life in particular, I would love to also this podcast is for men and women, but mostly women. But for the lessons from my life in particular, that one I wanted to leave it open for men to come here and tell us their stories. What's that lesson they have learned in their life, and what is the background of that particular lesson? So, and that's how I remember during the Sabasaba, this Safari Yangu podcast was started on Sabasaba of this year. And that day stood out for me because I stayed in the house and all I could hear were gunshots. I could hear gunshots everywhere because on that particular day the government was very alert. I don't know, they were trying to intimidate people or what, I can't tell, but I was just at home and the air was so bad. I sat here. I started writing scripts for the podcast as I'm thinking about it. And then in the evening, I switched on my camera. I sat on this chair and I shot my first episode, which was, I think, released a few days later. But that day was a day that I shot like 2 episodes on that day. And the first episode was a letter to myself. So starting these 2 podcasts has shown me the power of taking a chance on yourself. And that sometimes all you need is to plant an idea. It might not happen as exactly the day you set it out, but having that idea or having that dream, and then eventually stop procrastinating and take that chance on yourself and get started on those dreams that you have. It's very, very important. And for me, it has worked. I'm grateful for this journey. I'm grateful for 2022 because that's when the seed was planted. I'm grateful for 2024 because that's when the bigger conversation started about a podcast. And I'm grateful for 2025 for the fact that the conversations moved from just being conversations of, oh, we will start a podcast or I'll start a podcast, to a podcast happening, as hosting guests, and me starting Safari Yangu Podcast. So, are you taking a chance on yourself? Are you taking a chance on your dreams? Or are you seated somewhere and waiting for things to happen? Because from my experience, you cannot procrastinate for too long. I pushed mine. I did really push it. But procrastination will not get you anywhere. At some point, you have to take that chance. If you fail, the other thing I've also learned, if you fail, you fail. But at least you took that chance on yourself. So take that chance on yourself today and learn whatever it is. Any lesson, whether you think it's negative or whatever, is still a lesson that can push you to the next level. Until the next time, I'm your host, Miss Kimaru. It's been the Safari Yangu Podcast. Bye.